Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock and this is American Truck Simulator. Let's rant with Scrapper. We're going to drive our truck, or some truck. It's not ours. We don't own anything yet. We only have 20,000 bucks in our account. We need about 125,000 to be comfortable buying a first truck. They cost about 118. You want to have 5 to 10,000 in the bank after that to do things like pay for repairs and gas as you first take your early jobs that don't pay all that much money. Later on, it's no problem, and I've played games where I've owned 3 garages and 20 trucks, but obviously it starts off slowly. So we're going to go into the job market, and we're going to take a quick job once again, and let's try, I don't know, Denver or something. Here we go. Let's try Denver, and we'll start there and see where it takes us. Oh, there's nobody going to Denver or from Denver, so that's no good. All right, well, let's just take whatever the longest job is, maybe. Let's do, oh, this one's 21,000. It's 34 bucks a mile. It's not as much as that one, but this one is... well, articulated. Okay, that's not too bad. And we're just doing Texas still. All right, well, we'll do it. Since it's good money, it'll double our current amount of cash. And as we go, we're going to do another rant. This one comes from a video that I was watching a while back. The channel is called Roll for Combat. And on the channel, it is... mostly run by 2 guys, a person named Steve Glicker. Oh boy, oversized load here. And where are we going? To the right. Okay. And another guy named Mark Seifter. And the 2 of them are creators of 5th edition D&D and 2nd edition Pathfinder content. Their content item is called the Battle Zoo. And they put out like all sorts of like creatures and player character races and things like that. I don't know a lot about it because I don't play either 5th edition D&D or Pathfinder 2e anymore. Never played Pathfinder, and I don't play 5th edition D&D anymore. Can we get this thing out of here without scratching it? Are we going to get in trouble? All right, we're all right. So this is going to be a difficult one because it's a very long load, but I'll do the best I can. I'm not a great truck driver, to be honest. Anyway, so in one of their... They do these live streams, and they do them like every week, and they talk about whatever is current and whatever is... kind of trending and so forth. I found them actually during the OGL scandal. Glicker had a lot to say about it. He knows a lot about publishing and the legal ease of being in the game publishing industry, and he's also worked for Fortune 500 companies, so he understands what business talk means. And so he had a lot of really interesting stuff to say, and he was very knowledgeable, and I found him to be worth listening to. Okay, it looks like we're far enough, and there's nobody coming that way and nobody coming that way. And so during one of their streams, and I can't point you to which one because it's been months actually since I wrote this down, but I had it in my notes as something to rant about. I think I never did. If I did, I've forgotten about it. But I remember mentioning it to a friend of mine, and he was like, wow, that's a brilliant comment. And they were talking about how in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, there's a lot of content that is designed to make like the players feel cool and powerful. Somebody in one of the comments from one of my videos said that that they, as a GM, that GMs want the players to feel super and super powerful or something like that. And I actually said I don't. Unless I'm running a superhero game, I don't, because if they're super powerful, it means they're hard to challenge, right? And there are a lot of things that we've discussed. Wow, look at that fallen tree there. In 5e D&D that make it very hard to GM because it makes the players so powerful and their characters can do so many things that can break plots, right? And they are, it's, you know, if you go by the rules of the challenge rating, you end up with encounters that are too easy unless you, and what you're supposed to do is throw like 6 to 8 medium encounters at them a day, and each individual encounter is going to be boring as F, but by the end it will be hard because they've used up limited resources. And it's just not the type of play that most people do anymore. Most people do more story-based content, and you're not going to get 8 to 10, 6 to 8 encounters per in-character day. You're just not in most campaigns, and I think even in many of their campaign books you don't. And so this makes it very hard for the GM to calibrate, and then the players get so many powerful options now. There's a thread going on in the D&D Beyond forum right now as I record this. I last read it a few days ago. I don't post there anymore, but I read there sometimes, and a friend of mine posted there, and then I follow him, so I looked at what he posted, and they were talking about Twilight Clerics and basically how overpowered they are. I don't really know anything about them because I've not run or played a Twilight Cleric. They're from one of the newer supplements, and one of the more forgiving of 5e posters actually came in and said, look, let's face it, there's no conceptual, there's almost never an in-game conceptual in-character reason for anyone to play a Twilight Cleric. You're playing it because you want to be OP, overpowered. And many of the new options are, in fact, overpowered. So they were talking about this, and how the 5th edition rules have increasingly, the official rules have increasingly made player characters more powerful and sort of, shall we say, for lack of a better term, make players feel like their characters are cool, right? They're super and cool, and why wouldn't you want to do that? And Mark Seifter had a really good reason why not, and he articulated something that I think has been in my unconscious for a long time, but I knew it sort of intuitively, but I had never really put words to it. And what he said was, you can think of, there goes Amazon Prime, so we have all these cool real world companies now in the game, which is awesome. It's a mod. Anyway, you can think of a role-playing game group as a family, right? And the rules are like one parent, and the game master is like another parent, and the players are like the kids, right? And so if you have a system like that where you have two individuals or whatever in power together, sharing power, usually what happens is one person is the disciplinarian and the other person is the cool parent, right? And you can even think of that in when I was in junior high school. We had junior high still when I was a kid, 7th and 8th grade. There were two principals, essentially. There was the principal, Dr. D, I won't say his name, and then there was the vice principal, Mr. G. And as kids, we all loved Dr. D. He was cool, and we loved him. He was nice, and everybody liked him, and he was friendly, and blah, blah, blah. And we all hated Mr. G, because Mr. G was the one who lowered the boom on you. When you got sent to the principal's office, you got sent to Mr. G. Dr. D didn't deal with that. He was dealing with the school budget and all that other stuff, right? When you got in trouble for running in the hallway, when you got detention, whatever, it was Mr. G you dealt with. He was the one who would walk the halls and yell at us for running and yell at us for not getting to class on time, right? And we didn't like him. And my mother said, he's got the tougher job because he's the disciplinarian, right? Dr. D gets to be the cool guy, but you need the disciplinarian or there's going to be chaos in the junior high school. And similarly, if you have a game group, and one parent is the rule book and the other parent is the GM, somebody needs to be the disciplinarian. You can't both be the cool parent, or you're going to have utter chaos at the gaming table, right? So what Mark Seifter said is, in most game systems, and certainly traditionally, the game rules, the rule book, right, and in a sense the game devs, that's the disciplinarian, right? And if the rule book takes the role of the disciplinarian, right, the really tough thing that says no you can't, no you can't, no you can't, right, that allows the GM to be the cool parent, the cool mom or the cool dad, who will allow it anyway and, let you get away with it, right? And he said that's the way most role-playing games are designed. Certainly, that's the way AD&D was designed. All of these rules about everything, and they're very strict and very rigid. And then, in my group, we relaxed a lot of them. Okay, we're not going to use that one. It's too hard, right? And so that makes the GM be the cool parent. And what Mark Seifter said was, the problem with 5th edition is that 5th edition is trying to be the cool parent, right? The permissive parent. And if that's true, then who has to be the disciplinarian now? The GM, right? So they've put the GM in the role of being that disciplinarian who's telling you don't run in the halls and giving you the detention and everything, because the rule book, the game devs, are trying to be the cool parent. And you might say, well, why can't you just have 2 cool parents? All right, in junior high, having 2 cool principals might lead to chaos, but what kind of chaos are you going to have at the game table? Well, for example, you're going to destroy verisimilitude. We've talked about this a lot of times before, but here's something I don't know if we have talked about, and this has to do with game masters, right? Remember that the game master is often, unless they're using a published setting, the game master is the world builder, right? They're creating a world, and the creation of worlds is something that usually you try to do, unless you're building a cartoon world like in the game Toon. You're usually you're trying to be somewhat realistic. You're trying to have a verisimilitude in your world. This is a Mack truck, by the way. You're trying to have verisimilitude in your world, and to do that, right, you have to have things be realistic. And so for most game masters, verisimilitude is actually quite important, okay? And so having game rules that allow the players to trash verisimilitude means that either the GM has to accept the destruction of the verisimilitude of the world they're trying to build, or they have to lower the boom and be the mean parent, the disciplinarian. And what Seifter argues here is that at a certain level, although he's often very diplomatic, and I don't think he really said this specifically, because Seifter would never, is never openly critical of anybody. He's a super polite guy. I think that what you can take from this is that, in a sense, it's actually bad form for 5th edition D&D, or any game, but 5th edition does it, to try to take the role of the cool mom or the cool dad. Because this then, by almost default, casts the GM in the role of being the bad guy, of being the disciplinarian, right? And what Seifter argues is that preferentially, the game system should be the one to take it on the chin and be the disciplinarian that people don't like so much, right? And give the GM at the table the opportunity to be the cool one that everybody thinks is awesome, right? And that by doing this, you will make the GM seem a lot more open to the players. The players will be a lot happier with the GM, right? So let me give you an example of how this could work. You have a game that has 25 options. And let us have the options be written the way old school champions used to write options. In old school champions, what they used to do is they would say, you can't do this unless the GM decides, with excellent justification by you, otherwise, right? That's how they would word it, right? That you're not allowed. So a great example would be in 2nd edition Champions, skills versus powers. And skills had a very specific definition in 2nd edition Champions from 1981. They weren't things you learn versus powers being things that are innate to you, because danger sense was a skill, but you can't really learn danger sense. It's more innate. So they weren't. Skills seem to be things you would learn, but they were very clear in the 2nd edition rules. What makes something a skill versus a power is that powers can take power modifiers, advantages, or limitations, and that they can be put into multi-powers or elemental controls. However, skills may not take, great detour, may not take advantages or limitations, and skills may not be placed into multi-powers or elemental controls. Then they said, however, with proper justification, if the GM deems it reasonable, the GM may make exceptions. And the example they give is skill levels, which just improve your ability to do something, right? Like give you a bonus. Normally, because their skills cannot be put into, not have a power modifier put on them, like obvious accessible focus. However, they said maybe you've got a character who has a rifle with a scope on it, and they want to put like 2 levels with energy blast, the rifle being the energy blast, OAF scope. The GM may allow it if they want, because it would make some sense that the scope would make you better at shooting, but it would be an accessible focus because you could yank it off the rifle, right? And if the guy's not holding the rifle, they don't have the skill levels, right? Because the skill levels only apply to when you're holding the rifle. So they said you could allow something like that, but this is entirely at the GM's discretion, right? So now imagine 25 optional rules, or rules like this, right? 25 items that say normally you're not allowed. The rules say no, but the GM may at their option say yes. And imagine that out of those 25 rules, the GM says, I'm going to say yes to 10 of these. I'll allow 10 of these, right? Out of the 25. Well, most players are going to say, hey, that's a pretty generous game master. The game master allowed us to have 10 whole things that the book says you normally can't do, but the GM's going to allow it. That's a pretty cool guy, and it's a GM who's working with us and trying to make the game fun for everybody, right? It feels good. The GM allowed 10 extra things that you normally can't do in the rules. Okay? However, imagine the opposite, the way 5th edition is mostly written and the way they mostly describe rules in 5th edition is you can do this unless the DM says you can't, right? And this is now becoming almost encoded to the point where the DM kind of can't without actually doing homebrewing. So a great example would be feats, which are optional in the player's handbook and 5th edition proper. In 6th edition or 5.5 or 1 D&D or whatever they're calling it now, feats are part of the background rather than class features or whatever. Feats are part of the backgrounds, and they come in automatically. When you choose a background, you get a set of feats that you can pick from. And unless they've changed it, right, the developers said, well, we wanted players to be able to play around with feats right from level 1 and see if they like them and it's something they want to use. There was no mention of, well, what if the GM doesn't want them? Now, obviously, the GM could say, I just ignore those, we're not going to use feats. But this is now the GM taking something away that the rules had by default given you, right? So now imagine this same analogy of 25 items in the rules. But instead of saying you can't do this unless you provide excellent justification and the GM specifically approves it and says you can, okay? And instead the rules say you can do this unless the GM disallows it. And now let's imagine that the GM, same numbers, disallows 15 of the 25, but allows 10. Is this going to feel the same as the GM who allows 10 out of 25 no's, right? When the GM says no to 15 out of 25 yeses, the GM's still allowing 10 out of the 25 options. It's the same in both cases. But in the D&D case, the GM feels like he's taking stuff away from you instead of giving stuff to you, right? By the rules giving it to you and then saying, but the GM can take it away, yeah, it's optional, but it sure feels a lot different because it feels like the GM is taking away stuff that you should have by default, okay? And so this is Seifter's point, that the rules are setting themselves up to be the cool dad or the cool mom, and they're putting the GM in the position of being the uncool disciplinarian who everybody's mad at because they're taking things away from you or punishing you or whatever, right? You've got to have that disciplinarian or you have chaos. You have a gonzo world when you don't want one, right? You have a complete destruction of verisimilitude, which, as we've discussed in this episode, might make GMs pretty unsatisfied, right? This bothers me, right? But I don't think it's just me. I think a lot of game masters who world build care about verisimilitude. How do I know this? Well, you can look online about how to world build, right? Great GM has some videos on it. There's a couple of other people. I think WASD 20 is the name of it, one channel. And they're like, here's how to build realistic maps. Where do the mountains go on a continent? How do rivers flow? Where do you find hills and prairies and valleys, right? They're telling you how to build a geographically realistic world. They have episodes on cultures and factions and kingdoms and politics. Matt Colville has one about how to do realistic politics, right? All of this is tons of advice. I mean, Seth Skorkowski has stuff about this. Luke Hart has stuff about this. Luke Hart is, he just did a Kickstarter for, which I got in on. He's got 3 books, and they're all about how to GM and stuff. And there's world building stuff in there. How do you build a world? And it's all about how do you make it realistic? How do you make it feel as real as Middle Earth from Lord of the Rings, or as real as, the Star Wars universe? How do you make it feel as real as the real world did, right, to your players? And having things be realistic and the verisimilitude is obviously really important to that. If you have rivers flowing uphill against gravity, then that's not realistic. It seems like a cartoon world, right? Look at what we're doing right here. Look at this, right? What is so great about this game is how realistic the scenery looks, and how, to someone who's not a truck driver, how much it feels like I'm driving a truck without really being like driving a truck, because I do automatic shifting and stuff like that, because I'm no good at stick shifts. And I want a relaxed experience here, but look at the scenery, right? Look how realistic it is. Well, they have to do things like make the truck lose speed for a given amount of pressure on the gas going uphill, and gain speed going downhill. They have red lights, and they have traffic, and we just had a hazard, right? A detour that I got lucky. I was able to just go around it very quickly, but sometimes you end up going miles and miles out of your way and, delivering the load late and losing money, right? You have to go to weigh stations. They might be making me do that here. I don't know. Sometimes they definitely do it when you're using your own truck. Um, you have to get gas. You have to sleep every so many hours because truckers need sleep. Or we're able to bypass the weigh station, but a lot of times you have to go in and get weighed. And if you don't go in when it says you can't, when it's not a green light, if you don't go in there, you get into trouble. You can be fined, right? And we have to put our lights on at night. It gets dark. It rains. You put on the windshield wipers, right? These are all things that enhance the truck driving experience and make it feel more like I'm really driving a truck, right? And so those world building items go into the verisimilitude that makes me want to play this game because I feel like I'm a trucker. And what did I do? I downloaded a mod that takes all of the fictional businesses that are similar to the real world, but are cartoonish tweaks, like Wahlberg instead of Walmart, and the Home Store instead of the Home Depot, right? And the mod I got, which was made by users, right? It's a Steam Workshop mod, changes all of those logos to real ones. We had Coca-Cola in front of us for a while. We've seen BP in this episode. We just passed a BP truck on the left there. We've seen the Home Store in previous episodes. I saw Archer Daniels Midland ADM for agriculture. We passed, what was it? It wasn't Hershey. Nestle. There was a sign for that. There goes BHP, right? So we passed an Amazon Prime truck, right? Why would I even add that mod? Because it increases the verisimilitude when you see like a Coca-Cola truck or Walmart truck or a Archer Daniels Midland, ADM truck or a Home Depot store, right? It makes me feel, there's a UPS truck just drove by on the left. It makes me feel more like I'm really driving on a real highway in Texas, right? They just had photos that they put on the Steam community page for this game of the team that is building Nebraska, and I guess they're going to do the Dakotas next, that group. They have several teams working on different states. And they showed photos of their trip to Nebraska. The four of them went to Nebraska to do research, and they visited a whole bunch of places and took a whole bunch of pictures for reference so that when they go to build the 3D world of Nebraska in American Truck Simulator, it looks like Nebraska. And they tried to make this look like Texas, and they tried to make California look like California. When you're driving in California, your speed limit isn't 75, it's 55. 55 for trucks in California all the way through the state. A lot of people are like, I don't even want to drive in there because it's so slow. But if you want to get achievements, you got to drive in there and go to all the cities. So at some point, we are going to go in there. And the point of that is that lowered speed limit might be annoying, but it increases verisimilitude, right? And so world building often requires verisimilitude. And the crazy gonzo, ridiculous, no limit stuff that the cool dad or mom may let you do is potentially verisimilitude breaking, right? And so if D&D puts itself up to be the cool parent and lets you do all this game breaking stuff and all of this like crazy gonzo stuff, and whoops, meant to hit the brake there, and you want to have a realistic world, then as a GM, you're going to have to come in and say, no, 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 right? I don't know what the count is now, but the last time I looked, and I did mention this in a previous Let's Rant, I think, in City of Heroes, there are 42 or more sub-races in D&D, and out of those, do I need to be in the left or the right here? I think right. Out of those 42 sub-races, there are many who have weird abilities, things like flying and They might be able to breathe fire and all that kind of stuff, which may or may not be appropriate to all worlds. Additionally, there are, I can't remember how many subclasses of all the classes, and one of my friends, oops, wrong way. One of my friends, I mentioned this, did the math on multiplying subclass by race, subrace. And is this directing me in the wrong way here? No, I guess not. We're going over the bridge, I think. Oh, no, I went the wrong way. Yeah, this GPS is a little bit finicky. Anyway, if you multiply races, subraces and subclasses, what he calculated was there are, at the time, and it's probably more now, there were over 1,200 combinations. Any one of which could lead to broken gameplay depending on how the player may exploit the different sort of gameplay elements that go together with all of the different possible combinations of race and class features. Okay, and so that can be very hard for a GM, even if you're not worrying about verisimilitude. And so, yeah, it makes sense to say I'm going to cut some of that out so that I can kind of reduce the amount of RAM that I need to use as a game master to run this game. And so, oh, this is going to be a tight turn here. And so, I'm going over the curb. That's not good. Should be alright, though. So, anyway, Seifter's point about all this is... Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, that's not good. You see what a bad driver I am. Seifter's point about all this is that one way or another, somebody has to kind of be the person who's going to be the lower the boom and enforce the rules and kind of say no. And somebody has to be the one to say, hey, yeah, this is cool, you can do it. And it's a lot more comfortable for the game master and for the group if the GM at the table is the one who gets to say yes and the rules say no, so that the GM can be the cool dad or the cool mom, rather than the rules being the cool dad or the cool mom and then forcing the GM to be the one who says no. Now, you might want to ask, well, okay, why are the D&D devs trying to make the D&D rules be the cool parent? And I think the reason is just profit, right? That is to say, they can sell a lot more books if they're the cool dad or the cool mom, because players will want the cool, right? If the rule book is more disciplinarian and doesn't have all these overpowered options in it, and the GM can just allow the overpowered options themselves, then maybe fewer players buy the rules, or buy the supplements, or whatever you want to call it. Man, I almost hit that. I thought I knocked over that sign, but I guess not. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Do you think there's any merit to this idea that the rules are like the parents and the players are like the kids in the family, and that you need to have one disciplinarian and one cool parent, and that if the rules are the disciplinarian, the GM gets to be the cool parent, and if the rules are the cool parent, then the GM kind of has to be the disciplinarian, or you have chaos. And yeah, it's not fun, is what Seifter was trying to say, to be the disciplinarian. Mr. G probably didn't have anywhere near as much fun as Dr. D in my school, but somebody had to do it. And my mom greatly respected Mr. G, the assistant principal, because she said he's the one who keeps the discipline in that school. We all like Dr. D. She said, yeah, he's very nice, but he's not the one who keeps the discipline in the school. Mr. G, the vice principal, is. And you would have a zoo, you would have bedlam without his discipline in the class, in the hallways and stuff. And so So what do you guys think? Does that really work? Is that analogy apt for a game like D&D, or is Mark wrong and they can both be cool? You know what I think. You know that I'm going to say no. Not a fan of Rule of Cool in the first place, but I definitely think if you're going to have Rule of Cool, right, it should be the GM who's enforcing that rule, not the rule book, right? The GM gets to decide when cool stuff happens, not the rule book. And that's my take on it. Um, by the way, I really like Savage Worlds because Savage Worlds has this sort of built-in with the Benny system, right? As a game master, I can be the cool GM by giving out a lot more bennies. I can also be the cool GM by allowing you to do things with bennies that that the rules don't specifically say. They say you can influence the story, but they don't really have any specifics for how much you can influence. That's entirely left up to the game master. And as the GM, I can say, yeah, I'll let you do that. Give me a Benny for it, right? And so, is this going to go up? Oh, that was late. And so, I really like that about Savage Worlds because I can both give out bennies more, and that makes me a cool GM, without having to change the rules in a particular way because bennies let you do rerolls. And so you can be cool for yourself by saying, okay, I'm going to do a reroll here, right? And also, I can let players use bennies to influence the game and do cool stuff. And so there's ADM, by the way. And so that enables me to be the cool GM without having to change the rules at all. I really like that. And that is definitely a case of Savage Worlds letting you be the cool GM. So I'm not gonna park this. I'm just gonna go ahead and skip it. Hopefully you can see though we have Amazon, we have Archer Daniels Midland ADM, and we have several other company logos around here. And so this is with the new mod, and again, it's increasing the verisimilitude. All right, so we used a Mack truck for that one, and we got 960 XP, which I don't think is going to be enough to level us up. Oh, it did. We just barely leveled up. And I think we're going to go for long distance again, so we can go a little further. And we now can do, at rank 3, deliveries up to 1,000 miles. So that should get us a lot farther. But I think that is enough for today. We've doubled our money to 40,000 bucks. We're about a third of our way toward being able to get our first truck, and I hope you guys are enjoying. Again, leave comments both about the gameplay if you want, about American Truck Simulator and whether you're enjoying it. One person has left a comment that it's sort of soothing and mellow game, and it definitely is. And then, if you want, go ahead and leave comments about the disciplinarian versus cool parent, and let me know what you think about that as well. Until next time, folks, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been American Truck Simulator.